On a remote island far out at sea, a volcanic eruption ravaged the villages, engulfing them in flames. Two young boys, Jinji and Jukido, fled the disaster. Jinji reassured Jukido, promising to protect him. They ran to their uncle, the mayor, who was overseeing the evacuation. He instructed them both to board the evacuation ship and leave the island. Jinji was deeply worried about his two older brothers, Hazuki and Eke, who remained behind. Jukido, however, seemed remarkably calm, perhaps because Jandai, the master who trained all three boys, had arrived. On the erupting volcano, Jandai slowly smoked a cigarette, gazing at the immense inferno. He believed this to be his final mission. Time seemed to fly by. Several years later, in a large city, Jukido had grown into a young man. That day, he received a letter from Uncle Sanji. It had been so long that he couldn't remember who Uncle Sanji was. That night, he dreamt of being submerged in the ocean. For someone without friends like him, it was a strangely peaceful dream. The next day was Jukido's graduation ceremony. Everyone was moved by the occasion. Jukido, however, remained unconcerned, having never had any friends. Since the age of 5, he had lived in an orphanage in the city. Soon, he would be returning to his hometown to live with his father's friend's family, who would become his legal guardian. He was on his way out of the school gates when he noticed everyone was whispering and talking amongst themselves. A young man with green hair was drinking a lot of beer, waiting for someone. Jukido ignored him and tried to walk past, but the man greeted him and then embraced him. Jukido didn't know him and, unconcerned, pushed him away and continued on his way. The man followed him. At a bridge, the strange man grabbed Jukido and threw him into the sea, telling him to try flying. Jukido, panicked, sank beneath the waves. Unconsciously, his eyes glowed, and the surrounding water formed a whirlpool. He desperately tried to stop it but couldn't control it. The man, still standing on the water, chanted an incantation that stopped the whirlpool. Then, he took out a bag and swallowed Jukido whole. When Jukido regained consciousness, he was adrift at sea. The ship's captain explained they were heading towards Azaka Island, Jukido's hometown. The man introduced himself as Jinji, a disciple of Jukido's father. Jukido was astonished, especially when he saw a train speeding across the ocean beside their ship. Soon, they arrived at Azaka Island. This was where Jukido had lived before he was 5 years old. A short time later, two people came to greet them, a girl named Momo and Jukido's uncle Sanji. They all got into a vehicle. Jukido saw a peaceful countryside, and even some strange creatures flying in the sky. They arrived home. Momo explained that Jukido's father was a skilled spiritual conduit master, a protector of Azaka Island's peace. Spiritual conduit masters possess extraordinary abilities, just like them. Jinji is the third disciple of Jukido's father. He also has 2 other disciples who are even more skilled than Jinji. Jukido wanted to learn more about his mother, but nobody here knew. Previously, his father had unexpectedly brought home a stepchild, which came as a surprise to everyone. Uncle Sanji also told him that when his father passed away, he left a will instructing that Jukido should live in the city, cutting off all ties with the island for a period of time before being allowed to return. Jukido didn't really care, because it made no difference to him where he lived. He went to his room and was startled when a strange creature flew in through the window. Jinji explained that it was a Mitama, a harmless creature. There are many of them on the island. He advised Jukido not to build walls around himself. The people here are kind, so he doesn't need to be cold and distant. Jukido didn't want to get close to anyone else because, in the past, at the orphanage, a friend had teased him. In his anger, Jukido unconsciously used his powers, causing his friend to be trapped inside a water sphere to prevent a similar incident from happening again. He decided not to make any more friends. However, Jinji, oblivious to his feelings, continued playing games, which irritated Jukido, causing him to go outside for a walk. He was trying to figure out how to maintain distance from people to avoid emotional turmoil when he saw a Mitama flying down towards a nearby canal. He watched intently, and a large pillar of water suddenly appeared. From within the water pillar emerged a face with one eye, terrifying Jukito. Jinji then appeared, grabbed him, and flew away. He explained, "It's an azumatama. Mitama are harmless, but azumatama are dangerous to humans." He told Jukito to watch a spiritual conduit master fight. Then, he chanted an incantation, focusing power in his arm. Jinji leaped, dodging the azumatama's attack, and struck it with a powerful blow. Yet, it still lived. Jinji then threw Jukito into the azumatama's watery form. Jukito was furious because Jinji kept putting him in danger. Unconsciously, he unleashed his power, causing the azumatama to explode into streams of water. He couldn't control the water, and it surged towards Jinji. Jukito thought he'd endangered someone again, but Jinji simply chanted an incantation that dispelled Jukito's power. The next morning, Jinji woke to find Jukito meditating and training. Jukito wondered if this method would actually improve his control over his powers. Jinji wanted him to first sense the spiritual veins within his body, a type of energy flowing beneath the earth of Azaka Island. Spiritual conduit masters use this energy to wield their powers. As for Jukito, he needed to connect with a vast source of power to stabilize his own abilities. He told Jukito to use the incantation he'd been taught a few days earlier. Jukito recited it, and a water sphere rose from the lake. Jinji simply sneezed, causing Jukito to lose focus, and the sphere shattered. Jinji was surprised that Jukito hadn't mastered such a simple incantation. He demonstrated, showing how, upon reciting the incantation, he could shape the water sphere and make it do whatever he wanted. Jukito saw that he was rather careless, but it was undeniable that Jinji was incredibly strong. That day, Jinji looked utterly dejected. He said he'd run out of sake and wanted to go drinking at the bars, but the bar owners kept demanding payment for his debts. Jinji had drunk a lot and didn't have the money to pay. Now that Jukito was his disciple, he should help him pay off some of the debt. Hearing this unreasonable request, Jukito was about to refuse, but Jinji said he would teach him how to control his powers. At Hazuki's place, his two disciples were arguing over the task of eliminating Ajitama, as their numbers had recently increased dramatically. Jinji unexpectedly appeared, seizing the mission document under the pretense of helping Jukito learn to control his power. The two were astonished to learn that Jukito was the son of the great Jina. Jukito wasn't sure if this was a good idea, but Jinji didn't care. These two, Tazo and Zhao, were always competing with each other, but also worked well together. Jinji thought that since Jukito was around their age, they would quickly become friends. Jukito, however, was apprehensive, fearing that he might lose control of his powers and harm them. Jinji reassured him, saying it was fine, as they were spiritual conduit masters whose duty was to pacify the Mitama. A Mitama appeared by the canal. Mitama are completely harmless, but if damaged, they transform into dangerous Ajitama. Jinji mentioned that Ajitama as large as the one from before were rare, so Jukito should be at ease. From beneath the lake surface, an Ajitama emerged. Jinji told Jukito to trust him. He would protect him from behind. However, this Ajitama was even larger than the previous one. Jukito looked over and saw Jinji running away. He ran after him. The Ajitama relentlessly pursued them, attacking. Both of them fell directly into the river. Jinji claimed that to defeat that Ajitama, they needed to use a trump card. Jukito suspected that Jinji was going to throw him into the Ajitama again. Jinji stammered a denial. Thumb_up_down. But seeing his reaction, everyone understood. Afterward, the two secretly went to observe the Ajitama from afar. It stood motionless. After a while, Jinji revealed his plan to use Rukito as bait, so the two argued. The loud noise alerted the Ajitama, which charged, attacking only Jinji. Rukito, from behind, chanted an incantation, creating a water stream that knocked the Ajitama down. Jinji then recited a spell, using his strength to deflect the Ajitama's attack, before jumping and touching its head, causing it to dissipate. Rukito, seemingly understanding something, asked Jinji, "What did you do last night?" I went drinking with my friends last night, Jinji replied. Then he showed off his skills by creating a water puppet. He played with it, throwing cans for the puppet to fetch. Afterward, he fell asleep and forgot about it. It became angry, and when another spirit possessed it, it turned aggressive. That's why it only attacked Jinji. In the dangerous situation, Heizuki appeared, chanting a spell. He created a large whirlwind that enveloped the puppet. The whirlwind successfully purged the puppet's body. Heizuki was happy to see Rukido and even picked him up, but asked if he was still young. He explained that the recent surge in Mitama appearances was due to the spiritual masters failing to maintain the barrier preventing their entry. Jinji's frequent drinking had created weaknesses in the barrier, allowing the Mitama to slip through, and now he was being punished by cleaning up trash on the riverbank. Heizuki explained that the enraged Ama were caused by the Mitama's exposure to negativity, and their duty was to soothe them and return them to their Mitama master. Rukido was excited about the boat trip between the islands. That's how they travel between them. Today, the two were going to Akino Island. Unlike Ajaka Island, a peaceful countryside village, Akino was a highly developed island. Soon after arriving, they met Uncle Sanji. He introduced the island, saying, "Akino Island is wonderful, a thriving tourist destination." He then asked Jinji to take the boy on a tour. Jinji, planning to go to the casino, was annoyed at having to take a kid around. The place was bustling. While Rukido wasn't paying attention, Jinji disappeared. From afar, Jinji's voice could be heard. He was arguing with a street vendor about not being able to buy his favorite grilled meat. Rukido rushed over, apologized, and pulled him away. Jinji said he would go find Maki to complain, surprising Rukido that he had friends on other islands. Ahead, a clown was performing and was very popular. Rukido was watching intently when, once again, Jinji vanished. He looked towards the clown and saw everyone terrified as the clown's ball suddenly floated up, surrounded by black smoke. Rukido recognized it as an Azatama. The clown was about to touch it when it spewed flames. Luckily, Rukido pulled the clown aside. Everyone fled in fear. Rukido worried about defeating it. The Azatama Mitama created two fiery staffs to attack him, when from behind, gunshots rang out, followed by a volley that killed the Azatama Mitama. A man with red hair appeared, asking, "Are you Rukido?" He was his father's disciple. He was surprised at how much Rukido had grown, both in personality and appearance, compared to his master. Rukido was curious that he was a spiritual master who used guns. Explained that his bullets were specially made. Then he took Rukido to his bar. Here, Rukido found Jinji again. He scolded Jinji. "You keep running off." Jinji apologized. "I was hungry, so I came here to cook and chat." Rukido then asked about A's spirit subduing method. Unlike other spiritual masters who purify Ama Mitama into Mitama, A directly expels them. His master's method soothed Ama Mitama. Jinji and Heizuki both used this method. A was different. He eliminated them without leaving a trace. He did this to prevent deaths on Akino Island. There were many tourists. They knew nothing of the supernatural occurrences on the island. To ensure their safety, he needed to eradicate the problem entirely, preventing any Mitama from becoming Azatama. In his view, Jinji and Heizuki didn't care about the people, only the tranquility of the spiritual veins. At that moment, Y3, A's subordinate, arrived to call him away. The target had appeared, the true form of the Ajitama from earlier. Usually, Ajitama have eyes, but the one earlier had no pupils, indicating it was separated from a larger Ajitama. On the way back, Jinji told Rukido that A had formed a security company to protect the island, but their real job was expelling Ajitama. While disagreeing with the method, Jinji accepted it because many tourists visited the island annually. Even with a protective barrier, some still slipped through. A's mission was crucial. Jinji also warned Rukido not to mention Heizuki in front of A. Their relationship wasn't good. Then he remembered he'd forgotten to ask A for spending money and told Rukido to go ahead. Just then, Rukido heard a loud commotion. He ran over and saw a gigantic Ajitama, the true form of the one from earlier. He tried to soothe it using his own power, but the water stream he created had no effect. A's subordinates arrived and opened fire on the Matama, Jinji. At that moment, A appeared. He saw A's men intentionally using insufficient firepower, running out of ammunition. A arrived. Jinji told him, "Don't use forbidden magic." But he ignored him and stepped forward. He chanted a spell, and an eye appeared on his hand, causing him immense pain. The Azatama lunged, only to be sent flying by A's punch. Rukido didn't understand what was happening. Jinji explained, "A absorbed the Ajitama's power and made it his own. That's forbidden." A few days later, they arrived at Sano Island. Rukido found the vegetation even more lush than on other islands. Jinji, however, having won big at the casino and spent the night drinking, was incredibly sleepy. He even brought a large bottle of alcohol to share with Hazuki. The island had nothing but a shrine and Hazuki, who lived with his two disciples, Chot and Zhao. Rukido, eager for friends, had specifically asked Sister Momo about them. Jinji, observing Rukido's behavior, immediately understood. Just as they mentioned them, Chot and Zhao arrived, summoned by Hazuki. They took Rukido on a tour. There was a shrine to the fire and water dragons. On Show Island, 2 dragons resided. When they went berserk, disaster struck. The shrine was what contained them. A few years ago, the fire dragon had raged, causing a volcanic eruption that threatened Ikino Island. Luckily, the water dragon. Jinji suddenly felt like drinking with the 2 of them, but he tripped, causing all 3 to fall flat on their faces. Hazuki arrived and took Rukido to his study. He knew Rukido had questions. Rukido recounted his encounter with A and how he expelled the Ajitama. Hazuki asked, "What do you understand about the spiritual veins?" and agreed to help him deepen his understanding. He pointed towards the sea, to the islands in the distance, and said, "Beneath Azaka Island flows a powerful spiritual vein. If you focus your mind, you'll be able to see it." Rukido listened, focused his gaze, and slowly began to see the vein beneath, a thick, concentrated flow of spiritual energy. Just as he was seeing more, Hazuki woke him. He said, "Looking too long will affect your health. Matama are born from these veins, and if they're tainted, they become Azatama. Spiritual masters purify them, returning them to normal Matama." Rukido mentioned A absorbing Ama Matama. Absorbing them would slowly turn A into an Ajitama. He didn't understand A's motives, knowing the severe consequences and still proceeding. As Rukido exited the main gate, Chatero and Juko were waiting, inviting him somewhere. Jinji, freshly showered, was summoned by Hazuki, who inquired about Chot and A. Jinji believed A sought power to prevent any more deaths. Hazuki disagreed, stating, "People die, it's natural." He also instructed Jinji to thoroughly train Rukido. The next day, the island was deserted. Hazuki controlled his paper puppet to fly to the cherry tree, seeing what happened the previous night, Rukido's loss of control. At home, Momo gave Rukido an emergency evacuation kit, urging him to evacuate with everyone else. As a disaster response team member, she would stay to assist and follow later, waiting for Jinji, who had vanished. Rukido, unwilling to leave, asked to stay and help her. At Uncle Sanji's workplace, everyone was working frantically due to the previous night's eruption. The announcement that Nino Island would send ships to evacuate everyone cheered him up. Many tremors shook the docks, frightening people who prayed to Giant for protection. At work, A was in pain from his Ajitama arm. Ibara, witnessing this, was heartbroken. A insisted he was fine, just needing one last fight. When she offered to help, he refused. For the first time, he felt like Giant, choosing to fight alone to protect his students. Hazuki found Rukido, wanting to tell him something. He took him aside and revealed Rukido's origins. The volcanic eruptions on Ajaka Island were caused by the fire dragon. whose power had spiraled out of control after the water dragon disappeared. 15 years ago, the water dragon's power began to weaken significantly. Giant D had suppressed it by performing a ritual, separating the weakened water dragon from the spiritual veins, giving it a new form, and nurturing it until its power was restored. Rukido was the reincarnation of that water dragon. Hazuki had suspected this because of Rukido's incredible water manipulation skills. He confirmed it by touching Rukido and chanting an incantation. Rukido felt himself turning into water. Giant D had separated the water dragon into Rukido and nurtured him. Though powerful, Rukido was only 15. He needed years of training or a special ritual to reach his full potential. Hazuki hoped Rukido would one day regulate and suppress the fire dragon. He then ordered the three of them to evacuate, saying he had to continue Giant D's work, and flew away using his wind powers. Chat and Zhao wanted to evacuate, but Rukido hesitated. He voiced his concerns. Is simply running away really the answer? I've just been surviving until now. But here, he lived a normal life, expressing emotions freely. They knew he was the water dragon and didn't avoid him. Following Hazuki's words about continuing Giant D's work implied a willingness to sacrifice himself to subdue the fire dragon. They argued about whether to stay or leave until Ibara arrived, deciding they should help their masters. They were spiritual masters. They couldn't run. Hazuki flew to the volcano's mouth. Giant D's dragon-slaying sword, the seal, was broken. He used a scroll, chanting a sealing incantation. Arrived, and they immediately argued, each wanting to sacrifice themselves and have the other retrieve their body. From the lava, the fire dragon emerged, as before. Angrily used forbidden magic to attack, but the dragon was unharmed. Hazuki used wind to pull out of the way just in time. The dragon grew furious, and another eye appeared. It had fully transformed into an Agitama. Its fire was blocked by Zhao's water wall. The story goes back 15 years. While Jinji played with the young Rukido, he unconsciously unleashed his power. His arm turned into water, surrounding them both, surprising Jinji. Giant D appeared, dispelling the attack. He said Rukido was special. Since Jinji also controlled water, he revealed Rukido's true identity, warning him to keep it secret. Back to the battle. And Hazuki scolded their disobedient disciples, but seeing their determination, reluctantly agreed to let them fight. Charged first. The dragon was about to attack with fire when Hazuki's whirlwind deflected it, and landed a punch. Rukido created water pillars to engulf the fire dragon. Then Ibara attacked, using her electricity powers, causing the fire dragon to roar. Even that wasn't enough. It was still furious. The story continued with Jinji's memories. Whenever and Hazuki weren't around, he'd ask their master about Rukido. If Rukido becomes a dragon, will I still see him? It worried Giant D. Rukido's transformation depended on him. Giant D entrusted Rukido's protection to Jinji before the battle with the fire dragon, a battle that cost Giant D his life. At the funeral, everyone rejected Giant D's wish to send Rukido to the mainland for 10 years. Jinji was furious, believing his master must have had a reason to transform Rukido into the water dragon form. Giant D needed a specific spell, but he was dead. Jinji, the only one who knew the truth about Rukido, decided to find that spell and awaken Rukido, replacing his master. He found it. Back to the battle. Knowing the truth empowered Rukido, but everyone was exhausted. Hazuki used his master's technique to control chains from the lava to bind the dragon, but his power was insufficient. They broke. Used all his strength to transform into an Azutama and directly attacked the dragon. Hazuki used wind to enhance A's speed, delivering powerful blows. Knowing it was the end, Hazuki created a whirlwind to whisk the younger disciples away. Rukido felt useless, unable to help. Giant D's voice echoed. Why is your water dragon power useless? He suddenly appeared, explaining what he'd read in his master's spellbook. Long ago, Ajaka Island was protected by fire and water dragons, but the water dragon weakened. causing the fire dragon to run rampant and destroy the island. A saint sacrificed themselves, restoring the water dragon's power, creating a balance. However, decades later, the water dragon weakened again, leading Giant D to transform it into Rukido. He sacrificed himself, just like the saint. Now it was Jinji's turn. Upon hearing Rukido's return, Jinji excitedly went to greet him, only to find a lonely, less vibrant Rukido. After spending time together, he finally saw Rukido smile again. Since childhood, he had resolved to sacrifice himself to restore Rukido to his true form. But with the fire dragon's appearance, he changed his mind about dying. Jinji asked Rukido if he wanted to regain the water dragon's power to protect everyone. Rukido agreed. Jinji smiled, starting a ritual. Heizuki realized what he was doing and yelled at him to stop, but it was too late. Rukido found himself in a beautiful space. Jinji explained it was the spiritual vein. A spiritual master was needed to help the water dragon regain its power. Rukido understood Jinji was sacrificing himself. Jinji held his hand, instructing him to protect Ajaka Island, then jumped down. Outside, Jinji collapsed. Rukido regained his power. A massive water column erupted. The water dragon appeared before the fire dragon. They faced each other. The fire dragon unleashed a massive fireball, extinguished by the water dragon's power. The water dragon wrapped around the fire dragon and lifted it into the air. Their intense battle threatened the surroundings. Heizuki created a wind barrier to protect everyone from falling fireballs. He knew the dragons weren't actually fighting. They represented balance and were trying to restore harmony through conflict. Ah wondered if Rukido would return. They didn't know what magic Giant D used to transform the water dragon into a human. All they could do was wait and see if Rukido could calm the fire dragon and return to human form. Rukido spoke to the fire dragon, saying he'd been gone because he was weak, but now he was back. The two dragons intertwined and plunged into the volcano. In the distance, Rukido had returned to human form. Though knowing Jinji was dead, he pretended he was still alive, trying to wake him. Uncle Sanji, receiving a call, joyfully announced that the fire dragon had been stopped. Hearing the bad news, he felt sad. After losing his brother, became withdrawn. He didn't attend the victory celebration planned by his subordinates. Jinji's funeral was held that night. His friends mourned, mentioning that before he died, Jinji had paid off all their drinking debts. Uncle Sanji, alone in a room, reminisced about Jinji and cried. Heizuki found smoking alone in a field. They recently learned that Jinji had learned the technique from their master's diary, detailing the self-sacrifice needed to transform the water dragon into its true form. Heizuki believed their master had intended to use it, but died fighting the fire dragon, and Jinji had continued his work. Was angry that Jinji hadn't told them. Heizuki didn't think it was the right approach. If Jinji had told them, they would have fought over who sacrificed themselves. Jinji had silently carried out the plan to ensure Ajaka Island's safety. Heizuki's words fueled A's anger and frustration. He questioned the morality of sacrificing his brother to protect the island. Heizuki shouted back. What else could he have done? He knew Rukido was the water dragon, but didn't know how to awaken him. Their argument escalated into a fight, stopped only by the arrival of their three disciples. A laughed. No matter what, you couldn't protect your loved ones. Rukido sat alone, dejected, when Momo entered, comforting him, blaming him for everything. If he'd transformed into the water dragon on his own, Jinji wouldn't have had to sacrifice himself. Momo hugged him, saying it wasn't anyone's fault, believing Jinji had no other choice. Tears welled up in her eyes. She wanted him to see Jinji one last time. Suddenly, a Matama flew in. Following it, Rukido arrived at the living room where Uncle Sanji was watching over Jinji's body. He thanked Rukido for being the water dragon and protecting the islanders, heartbroken that another of Giant D's disciples had sacrificed themselves, just like Giant D 10 years ago. Rukido approached Jinji, seeing a smile on his face. He said, "That was selfish. thinking your sacrifice would solve everything was wrong. Everyone is heartbroken. Suddenly, Rukido reappeared within the island's spiritual veins. To his surprise, he saw Jinji hanging from a pillar, calling for help. Rukido didn't know how to help. Jinji fell and was swept away. Rukido informed Momo and Uncle Sanji that Jinji could still be saved and asked them to tell Hazuki and Ah. He went outside, and his power caused the nearby water to surge as he transformed into the water dragon. Hazuki and Ah sensed this and departed. As the water dragon, Rukido flew to the island and entered the spiritual veins. He opened his eyes in a vast, boundless space, unsure how to find Jinji's trapped spirit. A voice echoed. A masked man appeared, impressed that Rukido could maintain his human form. Removing his mask, he revealed himself as Giant, Rukido's father. Rukido asked why he had been alone for 10 years. Giant explained he had been here, soothing the fire dragon, but couldn't suppress it this time, allowing its escape. He'd left a message for Rukido to leave temporarily for safety. Rukido stated his intention to bring Jinji back. Giant, anticipating this, had left a trace in the spiritual current and offered guidance. On the way, a thick current blocked Rukido. Giant advised him not to stray too far, warning that it was easy to get lost. He showed Rukido how to overcome it, merge with the current. Resisting would turn the entities into Azatama to stop him. Rukido focused, abandoning his hostility, and easily continued. Outside, Hazuki was performing a crucial ritual near a shrine. A fire Azatama appeared. Chotaro and Juko were terrified, determined to prevent it from interfering with their master. Ah shot it in the head. Hazuki warned that the spiritual veins were extremely dangerous. Even witnessing them could cause unconsciousness. Yet, Rukido was directly entering them. The ritual attracted powerful Ajitama. Ah and his disciples would fight to maintain it. Inside the ritual, Rukido and Giant found Jinji nearly drowning in the current. Rukido grabbed him, scolding him. Jinji tried to explain but received a punch from Giant, who explained that self-sacrifice was the only option, that he'd sent Rukido away for 15 years so he could become the water dragon without anyone else sacrificing themselves. The problem was that none of them knew how to get out. Giant initially remembered the way, but Rukido's entry broke the seal, causing chaos. As they argued, Rukido heard a sound and saw a light. He grabbed Jinji and pulled him toward it. It was Hazuki's controlled puppet in the shrine, a gateway to the spiritual veins. He could hear people outside wanting to pull them out. Giant, saying goodbye, pushed them through. Jinji wanted to take him, but Giant had lived there too long and couldn't leave. He had to stay and talk to the lonely fire dragon. Outside, Ah, in pain, reached through the gateway into a stagnant area of the spiritual veins, trying to pull them out, but the current resisted. A deep voice asked if Rukido was leaving. Knowing it was the fire dragon, Rukido promised to return. The fire dragon helped push them out. At home, Uncle Sanji was terrified to find Jinji awake, thinking it was a ghost. The next day, he brought Jinji before everyone for an explanation. Jinji returned to his old life, drinking with his friends. Ah's organization continued to eliminate Amamatama, but he no longer used forbidden magic to absorb them. He simply destroyed them. Soon after, Rukido returned to school on Azaka Island. He made friends, a stark contrast to his lonely school days before. Chotaro and Juko then led Rukido to a peach blossom garden. Seeing they were around the same age, they wanted to befriend him. Rukido was happy but worried his power might endanger them, wanting to test his abilities. At the training grounds, Chot demonstrated first, planting a seed, chanting a spell to focus spiritual energy on it, causing it to sprout and grow into a sapling. Rukido, confident, did the same. His plant grew as tall as Chot's. However, the two argued about whose plant was bigger. Rukido wanted to know what kind of power this was and how it worked. Chot guided him, instructing him to focus the spiritual energy into the seed. Though confusing, Hazuki's lesson gave him a vague understanding. He chanted the spell, focusing the energy. The seed quickly sprouted, then rooted and grew rapidly, astonishing the two, who told him to stop before he destroyed the training grounds. But Rukido didn't know how to stop. The cherry tree continued to grow, blossom, and bear fruit, showing no sign of stopping. Jinji watched from afar. If you're in trouble, ask for help. He approached, telling Rukido to chant with him. With his help, Rukido controlled his power, stopping the cherry tree's growth. Rukido worried they'd be scared and wouldn't want to be friends anymore, but both were impressed by his power. They invited Rukido to become Hazuki's disciple, to study with them. After some thought, he decided to remain Jinji's disciple. Today, Jinji taught Rukido how to gather spiritual energy, control water, and create a shield. He couldn't yet control it perfectly. It was easily broken. Jinji told him to point his hand to the sky and sit on the shield, making it incredibly difficult to balance. Suddenly, the ground shook. For a moment, he lost focus, shattering the shield and sending both of them tumbling. The tremors continued. The next day, Momo showed no concern. If a volcano erupted, everyone would evacuate together. Jinji entered, saying, "There was an earthquake today, so I'm borrowing some money." She cheerfully agreed. Rukido was puzzled. Jinji said they were going to visit Giant's grave at the cemetery, where many Mitama gathered. They quickly finished cleaning. Jinji even took the opportunity to drink some sake. Several islanders arrived, worried about another earthquake and the possible reappearance of the fire dragon, praying at Giant's grave for protection. Jinji was very outgoing, chatting happily with everyone. Rukido just watched. People kept saying they owed their lives to Giant, piquing Rukido's curiosity. Jinji explained that two dragons, fire and water, existed there. The fire dragon's immense power constantly fueled the volcanic activity under Ajaka Island. 10 years prior, the fire and water dragons were balanced opposites, but the water dragon disappeared, upsetting the balance. The fire dragon, lacking harmony, grew stronger. Unsurprisingly, a volcanic eruption occurred 10 years ago. Giant sacrificed himself to suppress the fire dragon, making him a revered benefactor. Rukido realized his father was truly remarkable, and was about to ask Jinji something when he noticed Jinji looking glum. He saw Ibara walking alone. Jinji remembered that today was the anniversary of Ibara's parents' death. They went to their parents' grave to pay respects. Rukido noticed a set of keys Ibara dropped. Later, they went to Akino Island to return them. Unexpectedly, they encountered Chatero and Juko, patrolling the city for volcanic activity per Hazuki's orders. Upon learning Rukido was returning Ibara's keys, they made an excuse to leave, sweating profusely. They knew their master's relationship with Ah wasn't good, so it was best not to go there. When they arrived at Ah's shop, he told them to talk to Makita and left on business. Before leaving, he warned Rukido, "Be careful going home. The waves are very high today." Rukido was curious and asked why Ibara's parents had died on the same day. Makita explained that a few years ago, a large fire Azatama appeared. Ah had defeated it, but many people died. Therefore, Ah's company members hated Matama. They expelled them, never soothing them. Rukido planned to ask Makita to give the keys to Ibara, but Makita said he should give them to her directly and called Ibara. She arrived a moment later. They looked at each other without speaking. Jinji had to remind Rukido. Ibara hesitantly thanked him for the keys. Then, an earthquake struck. Jinji realized it wasn't a normal earthquake, but caused by a fire Matama. Ibara, upon hearing this, ran off, unable to control her emotions whenever an Matama appeared. Ah was currently discussing the issue from 10 years ago with Uncle Sanji. Although Giant had suppressed the fire dragon, the volcanic eruption was about to happen again. The surrounding islands would be engulfed in flames. Jinji and Rukido arrived at the scene to find destroyed houses. Jinji controlled the water from fire hydrants, saving people, and told Rukido to go to the Matama. Before the Matama could attack more people, Ibara arrived. Using her electricity powers, she moved incredibly fast, but was no match and was knocked away. Seeing the fire Azutama brought back painful memories. Previously, when her family was killed, the Azutama didn't give her time to reminisce, attacking her with fire. Luckily, Rukido appeared in time, creating a water shield to block it. That was when Ibara was still in school. A fire Azutama appeared, destroying her entire village. As it attacked her, appeared, protecting her, just like Rukido was doing now. He chanted a spell, gathering water from fire hydrants, and launched it at the Azutama. It was unharmed and became even more enraged. Chot and Zhao arrived to see what was happening. The Azutama unleashed a large fireball, stopped by Rukido's shield. Chot and Zhao were terrified. Ibara chanted a spell, using her electricity powers to leap high. The Azutama targeted the two boys. Before it could attack, Ibara punched it. She continued her assault, but it blocked her with just a few fingers. Rukido created a wall of water to push back the Matama. Ibara wanted to keep fighting. She wouldn't run, being a spiritual master. Chot and Zhao reluctantly agreed to help. They used their fans and flutes to generate wind and fire. When the Azutama wasn't paying attention, Rukido and Ibara attacked from both sides, combining water and electricity to injure it. Knowing she couldn't fight forever, Ibara feigned retreat. Zhao created whirlwinds of water to trap it. Chotaro and Juko combined their wind and fire, aiding in the containment. Finally, Ibara delivered a thunderous punch, destroying the Azutama. They were surprised Ibara could subdue it. Thinking it was over, 3 large, fiery rocks fell from the sky, each revealing a stronger Azutama than before. Rukido quickly created a water sphere to protect them from the fire blasts. Regardless, he was exhausted from the previous battle. Ibara planned to use herself as bait so the others could escape. Just as it was about to attack, Hazuki arrived, chanting a spell to create a whirlwind. The whirlwind's cutting force dismembered the Matama, returning it to dust. Another was shot by Rukido saw them. They all had powerful masters. He looked and saw who suddenly laughed loudly, looking at the eye of the Azutama he'd just shot. Zhao realized he was about to absorb it, just like before. Before could pick it up, Heizuki's wind blades sliced it to pieces. Heizuki was furious, disliking A's forbidden magic. Shouted, "My master died because they were weak. I want to be strong." The remaining Azutama was gathering its power for a self-destruct attack. Hazuki created blades that severed its arms. Shot it, leaving only the eye. He smiled, lunging to grab it, but Heizuki countered with wind. Didn't yield, using forbidden magic to transform his arm into an Azutama. Hazuki's wind was easily dispelled. He created 4 whirlwinds, but swatted them away. He tried to take the eye, but Heizuki kicked him, and they fought. The disciples couldn't intervene until Jinji arrived, using water to destroy the eye. This stopped the fight, but tensions were higher than ever. That evening, at the docks, Rukido and Jinji prepared to return to Hakka Island. He thanked Ibara for seeing them off, praising her strength in facing a powerful Azutama without hesitation. Flustered, she pulled out her phone, shyly offering her contact information. Jinji teased Rukido, "Got a girl's number." But for someone like Rukido, with no friends or lover for decades, he didn't know how to react and felt flustered. Shotaro and Juko also exchanged contact information, making Rukido happy because they were his first friends. The story goes back 10 years, when Rukido was a child. Every day, and Hazuki would return exhausted from training with Giandai. They'd argue whenever they talked, but their bond was strong. Every morning, they trained in spirit subduing. Giandai's personality hadn't changed much. He always teased them. Said, "You're good at controlling water, so don't be lazy." Giandai, considering him unimportant, dismissed him, only to get kicked and scolded. Asked their master to let Hazuki lead the dragon suppression ritual. Rukido thought it was just a boundary-reinforcing ritual, and Hazuki was capable. Hazuki worried he wasn't ready. Their master told them not to rush. You both have potential and will be strong in a few years. But this is an important ritual. Failure would unleash the fire dragon, so we can't entrust it to you without experience. Momo brought shaved ice, easing the tension. Time flew by. They lived happily together. One evening, Giandy came to Rukido's room, saw him sleeping, and looked at the stormy sky. The offerings had been spilled. He prepared to go to another island to retrieve items to suppress the fire dragon. Before leaving, he instructed everyone to stay inside and promised to return soon. Shortly after he left, strange things happened. Many Mitama flew around. Guessed the earthquake had weakened the fire dragon's seal. More powerful earthquakes followed, terrifying Rukido. Heizuki believed the fire dragon was much stronger now. Even the water dragon's lake, left behind before its disappearance, had dried up. It was a ticking time bomb. Since their master was away, Hazuki and decided to seal the fire dragon themselves. Jinji, though scared, wanted to help. He was knocked on the head, and they left Rukido in his care before flying to the island where the fire dragon was sealed. The scene was terrifying, cracks and flowing lava. They began chanting the dragon's sealing incantation, creating a light around the volcano's mouth. They succeeded, stopping the lava flow. They thought it was over, but a volcanic eruption began beneath the lava. The fire dragon, dormant for decades, awoke, roaring. It was their first time seeing it, and they were shocked. The dragon gathered its power and unleashed fire, but an ancient barrier blocked it. And Hazuki used their strength to reinforce the barrier, tightening the seal. The dragon roared in pain. Collapsed, exhausted, telling Heizuki to focus on sealing it. But it was too late. The barrier broke. The dragon attacked them with fire. Hazuki pulled aside, suffering burns. Just as it was about to attack again, Giandy returned, kicking the dragon. He used his tools and chanted, summoning massive chains from the lava to bind the dragon. He thought he had a 50% chance of sealing it by sacrificing himself. Naturally refused. Giandy instructed Hazuki to take away. Gritting his teeth, Heizuki created a whirlwind to transport them to another island, collapsing from his burns. The chains were starting to break. Giandy smoked a cigarette, smiling. He knew this was his final mission. To ordinary people, it was just a volcanic eruption, but behind it was a battle where Giandy would sacrifice his life for victory. The next day, things returned to normal. Hazuki and found their master, and were relieved to see him sitting there. But upon closer inspection, they collapsed. He had died with a smile on his face. Was furious at his inability to help their master. After that, and Hazuki argued frequently, and left the island. Years later, he returned, having learned a forbidden magic. Momo told Rukido everything that had happened. He recalled a fragment of a memory. Jinji was the one who pulled him away. That afternoon, while sleeping, Rukido dreamt he was submerged in water. A bright red light and an eye appeared from below, suffocating him. He woke up startled. Jinji checked on him, surprised by his bright blue eyes. Rukido received a message from his 3 friends, inviting him to a festival on Sunday. Excited for his first festival, he readily agreed. It was the fire festival. Jinji rummaged around and gave Rukido a mask, one Giandy used to wear. At the festival, Rukido and Jinji were amazed by the excitement. He'd never been to a normal festival before. 2 of Jinji's friends approached. Seeing them chatting happily, Rukido quietly left, surprised Jinji had friends. Jinji suddenly appeared behind him, startling him. He was there to share Momo's money for the festival. Ibara called from behind, wearing a yukata, shyly looking at Rukido. He suggested they look for Chot and Zhao, but Jinji pulled him aside, whispering, "She's wearing a yukata, compliment her." Rukido awkwardly complimented her outfit, but seeing her devil mask dampened his mood. She texted Rukido, "Thank you." It turned out she didn't want to show her face because she was blushing. The 3 of them went to the shrine to find Shotaro and Juko, who were complaining to their master about giving extra gifts to happy customers. They joined in, helping to arrange the good luck charms. Heizuki recognized Rukido's mask and explained the local custom, shedding your current identity to enjoy the festival. After finishing, Hazuki told everyone to go have fun while he and Jinji watched. Jinji didn't expect this. He wanted to join the fun. Suddenly, the image of the eye appeared, causing him a severe headache. Once he recovered, the four of them went to enjoy the festival. Jinji, still annoyed that Rukido went to the festival with friends instead of their master, wanted to punish him with water balloons, but seeing his effort to make friends, he left them be. They'd been walking for a while when Ibara complained of sore feet from the Geta sandals. Rukido suggested they rest since it was his first time wearing this outfit. Momo's sake stall was nearby, and she bandaged Ibara's feet. Uncle Sanji and his friends were completely drunk, while Momo casually downed a large ladle of sake, shocking the four. She was the one who had defeated all the men. Rukido asked Momo to tell him more about his father later, and she agreed. Ibara received a call from who wanted to talk to Rukido, making him nervous. He asked about his day with Ibara, wanting to know if she had fun. Rukido wasn't sure, but assumed she did. Hung up, seeming like a worried father. Just as Rukido was enjoying himself, the image reappeared in his subconscious. His power surged, causing the surrounding water balloons to explode. Worried that his uncontrolled power would endanger everyone, he ran away. He found an empty spot, his eyes still glowing blue. Seeing his strangely distorted shadow, he panicked, trying to control his power, but it spread uncontrollably. He didn't want his friends to be in danger. Remembering Jinji's lesson, he focused his energy and chanted a spell, successfully controlling his power. A masked man appeared, saying, "You're strong. You're ready to face your inner truth." Then he vanished in a gust of wind. Returning to the festival, he found Jinji drinking alone. He thanked Jinji for teaching him to control his power, surprising him. On Shell Island, the volcano had erupted. Festival goers were panicked. The eruption mirrored the one 10 years prior. Uncle Sanji quickly organized an evacuation to the town square. Everyone fled. Heizuki and saw this as the inevitable culmination. Rukido asked Jinji if the situation was okay. Jinji smiled and asked, "Like it or leave?" Though confused, got the message when Rukido said he didn't hate the island. He then disappeared using his powers,